All right, so I want to welcome everybody here to our first SALT Talks of the season. My goodness, this is going on year 9? We're going to be, I started in 2015, so January will actually be the 9th year. But SALT has been around, in your area. It seems hard to believe it's that long. So for those who don't know who I am, my name is Patty Schramm. I'm the Parent Resource Trainer Coordinator for the SALT Talks. We've been holding them virtually the last couple of years, and tonight we're doing a hybrid. We're going to have 3 hybrids this year. This one's in Montgomery County. Next month we'll be in Greene County, and then next April we have a Warren County hybrid. So we have 3 of them in 3 different locations. So you can watch we'll be sending out a newsletter, and we have a schedule also on our resource links, which is you can find on the Google Drive. We have a live binder, which we'll post the links to. There they just posted online for us, but those who are attending in the room, I can send them to you, or you can get them on. There should be a sign in at the back, and a flyer like with our schedule. You can find our resources on there. So a few quick announcements. So next week, just before we start, I just want to remind people that next Wednesday, we will have a lunch and learn. It's also a virtual session. We're going to be talking about IEPs and ISPs. How do you prepare for them? What do you do? We're going to be talking all about that. And then later in the month, we'll be talking to Project Life and Search. And then we'll be looking at the end of the month about employment and post-secondary. So watch for those sessions, because this month we're focusing all about transition. What do you do? How do you write it, into your IEP? What if you're out of high school and you have an ISP? Just how you work through all this. So that's going to be later in the month. At the end of this session, for those who are virtual, there's going to be a survey that comes up. And then for those who are there in the room, you can write this down or just make a note of it. We're going to have on a survey, there's just one question. Butler County is doing a survey. They're collecting data. Where are you as a caregiver? What are you as a caregiver doing for your own self-care? They want to know how the caregivers are taking care of themselves. So, if you want to answer that, we're just gathering information on that online. There is a survey at the end. So also I want to introduce, for those who are coming into the room, I have Inez is somewhere in the room. She's going to wave her hand. Wave your hand, Inez. She has been coming to SALT for I think since the beginning, for many years anyway, and her son's in transition. So she's a parent that's there in the room that's been going to these things. So if you have any questions, kind of confused about transition, you can ask her some questions, and she can direct you to, maybe someone in the room, maybe one of the speakers can help you answer where you're at. And also for those who are online, if you're not in Montgomery County, that's okay. Or for those who are listening, if you're not in Montgomery County, totally fine. Just take what is being noted today, like what is being said today, and then you can take it back to your SSA or your county board. Many county boards have the same baseline. There's a few variations, but you can take them back, any questions back to them regarding any of the things said here today. So with that, I am going to turn it over to, I guess, Michelle, are you first?
No, but I'm going to introduce, good evening, everyone. We're glad that you could join us either online or in person. And so just to introduce who our speakers are tonight talking about transition, I'm Michelle Garrett. I'm the Employment Navigator Supervisor. I have Kaye McCarthy. She's the Intake Eligibility SSA Supervisor. Stacy Mullens, who is the Transition Coordinator, and David Sullivan from Opportunities for Ohioans with Disabilities, and he is a supervisor. So I'm going to share my screen and pull up our PowerPoint, and Kaye's going to speak first. Can you see my screen online, Patty? Patty?
I was unmuted, sorry. Yeah, just hit share screen. I don't think you're sharing your screen yet. There you go. Now it's
Okay.
starting to come up. There we are. Yep, we can see it now.
Yep, all right. All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for having us here tonight. It's always a pleasure to talk to everybody about the transition and what that looks like and how we can help get you through. As Michelle said, I'm the Eligibility Service and Support Administrator, so I'm going to actually get this show started. Maybe. So tonight we're hoping to talk about the transition in Montgomery County. As Patty said, there are some things that might be a little bit different if you're in a different county. If that's the case, we'll try and point those out as we go though. And then we're also going to try and give you some tools for transition, which will hopefully be helpful for you. And then also talk a little bit about community outreach. So first, I'm going to get started by talking about eligibility in Montgomery County. Eligibility is a statewide process, and so it should be fairly consistent from county to county. When we get into the referral process, it might be a little bit different, but the eligibility determination itself will be the same. So in Montgomery County, we have up there, you'll see the very first line is our intake line. If you call that, Ginger Muse typically will call you back within 24 hours. She's very good about responding. Anybody can make a referral. However, the parent, guardian, or individual, whoever may be their guardian, would have to approve the process themselves. There's reasons for that, but we as individuals cannot just force a parent and or individual to accept our services. So we're always very respectful of the parents and their wishes. When you call and make a referral, we're just looking for basic information. So personal demographics, name, date of birth, phone number, how we can get a hold of you, what your diagnosis is, and what professional gave you that diagnosis, because we do have to have proof of that qualifying diagnosis.
Hey, Kaye, the slides aren't, are you moving through the slides? Because they're not moving.
I see that now, just as you said that, and I don't know why that is. Oh,
there you go.
That?
You're at the referral screen. That's what we see.
All right, perfect. I don't know why it did that. Next, once we receive a referral, we will send the intake packet to the person that is requested. Sometimes we can send them to teachers, we can send them to grandparents, maybe if the parents are overwhelmed, wherever we need to send it to. We just want to make sure that the packet gets back to us and we can process it, whichever process works best for the family. We also provide in Montgomery County, this is something that may be a little bit different. We provide assistance with collecting the collateral information. So just talk to your own individual county about that. But here in Montgomery County, we send a release of information so that we can gather documentation, which might be a psychological evaluation, some medical testing, the evaluation team report, anything that we might have where we actually have the testing to verify that qualifying diagnosis. Once we have that, we assign one of our 4 individuals, excuse me, to do an assessment. We usually complete it if they're a child in the school. The reason we started doing that is because it's easier on the parents. They don't have to take another day off work. They don't have to try and transport their child here or to another location. It also gives us opportunity to see the child in and of itself, kind of in a neutral environment. We can talk to the teacher, but we will always notify the family or the parent guardian to talk to them. We understand, we're very familiar with kids who can repeat things and say things, but maybe not be able to follow through. So we certainly want the parents' input, and we would not complete that assessment without their input. Once we complete that assessment, the parent is notified by letter of the outcome. And in that letter, we also give you an assigned ESSA. And that individual is your single point of accountability for the county board. They will call you within 15 days and they will talk to you about what services are available. maybe what services you need. Sometimes those services are going to be available through the county board. Sometimes they might be services that are available to you in the community. For instance, you might need maybe some medical equipment. We don't provide that, but we might be able to link you with an agency that can provide that for you. So that is something we would help refer you to, but our county board in and of itself would not provide the medical equipment. That's not what we do. We're not experts in medical equipment. And then if for some reason the individual is found not to have a qualifying diagnosis or not to be eligible for services, we would notify the family, and we would also give them due process at that time. And Patty, are we saving questions for the end, or are you asking people to put chats up as we go? Oh, you're muted.
I keep forgetting that. I'm getting used to this again. We're asking to hold like questions to the end so that we can just get through the presentation part, and then we'll just save your questions. For those who are on virtual or in the room, just save your questions and then we'll get them all covered at the end.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yep.
Because I was going to ask if we had any questions, but what Patty said. And so next, I'm just going to talk a little bit about the assessment tool. And I already kind of went over some of this stuff. I get ahead of myself. I apologize. So the assessment is based on same aged peers. So when we ask questions of 6-year-olds and when we ask questions of 16-year-olds, they are based on their same level. We're not asking the 16-year-old the same questions we are the 6-year-old. And then again, we also make sure that we're involving the caregiver, parents, and guardian in that interview process. They might not be present when we're doing the observation with the child, but we go over the assessment with them because we certainly want your input. There are 6 areas for the OEDI, which is the Children's Ohio Eligibility Instrument. In those areas are mobility, self-care, self-direction, capacity for independent living, learning, and language. And as I said before, certainly we're not asking a 6-year-old to be independent and, have a capacity for independent living. So we're talking about things like, do they do chores? Do they pick up their toys? So we're making it age relevant. And then the OEDI instrument, which is done at the age of 16. So even if you're eligible from the ages 6 to 15, you have to be reassessed at 16. So we go through that process again. And this time we do the OEDI assessment, which adds that 7th area, which is economic self-sufficiency. So one of the things that in Montgomery County that we do is if you are eligible from 6 to 15, we will notify you. We don't need you to remember that. We know you guys have a lot on your plate. And so we will not expect you to remember that. We will notify you about 2 months before your child turns 16. And one thing that's a misnomer is eligibility can be redetermined. So we have individuals who may not have been eligible at one point in time, and then they come back through and they're eligible at that point. So maybe the delays aren't as big when they're little, but then when they get bigger, there might be a bigger discrepancy, so they can be eligible. And then the reverse is true. We've had individuals who just needed, maybe because of surgeries or some physical aspects, were eligible when they were younger, but then through therapies and all of those kinds of things, they are able to catch up with their peers and then are no longer eligible for services. We want both of those to be true, right? And just for your information, assessors are trained and certified by the state of Ohio, so it is not something that anyone can do. We have 4 individuals here, I guess 5, including myself, that are eligible and that does the assessments here in Montgomery County. And then again, we talk about staying connected through the school years. That's one thing that we're very thrilled about here in Montgomery County, is because we do make a really strong effort to maintain contact at least twice a year. We talk to parents about that. How often do you want to be contacted? Do you want more contact? How do you want us to contact you? So we keep you active throughout your school services, and we try to get you transitioned. And Stacy and Michelle are going to talk a little bit more about what that looks like when they get ready to leave school. And then there are SSAs, or eligibility, or ESSAs, are school age based, and it's based on your school district. So for the most part, all of the people in your school district should have the same SSA. We do that so that they become familiar with resources within your area. And I really wanted you guys to remember this, that we notify the families that once you get ready to turn 16, that you will be redetermined eligible, but we will contact you. We will not make you remember that. And then upon accepting the diplomas, families are transitioned to I'm going to say adult SSA. And that's when, again, Michelle and Stacy will talk a little bit more about what that looks like when they leave the schools. But they will leave the school-aged based SSA and go to an adult SSA. And sometimes families might decide that they don't want services or they just want intermittent services. So again, they still receive an SSA. And we do have families who after high school say we really don't want services at this time. And that's fine too. Again, our services are not mandatory. If they decide that they don't want our services, they can always come back through later. But we do review all of our resources with the family because we don't want them to terminate from services if they don't want it. And the eligibility service and support SSA, they will again keep in touch with you throughout your school, and they maintain a community caseload based on their regions. We refer families to the necessary resources while in school. So they'll hook you up with recreation, behavior supports, and other community resources. And you can always reach out to them anytime you have any additional questions. You know, if they've got you hooked up with all of the resources and throughout the year you think of something else or something's going on with school, feel free to call them and ask them, and they can lead you into the right direction or help support you with that. Again, they do also participate in school presentations. Some of you may have seen us out in your community in some of your schools. We do presentations. We did one in Trotwood. Where was the one, Stacy? Was it Northridge, and we did one out at the ESC. So, and if they do provider fairs, we'll be out at those schools as well. So you might see us out there. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Michelle. Yes. All right. Thank you.
So, as your child starts transitioning to adulthood, we have, I think, 1 or 2 individuals who we've started working with at the age of 14, but your ESSA or transition coordinator can make a referral to the school to work employment specialist, which is Andrea Harker, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with. She is in the schools doing employability classes, and I know last week I think she was at Northmont, and I don't think she's been to Dayton Public yet, but Centerville, Fairmont. So she's trying to get out back into the schools. So her role is to support the student in a gradual progression from a high school environment to a competitive place of employment. So we're kind of modeling the OEDI model where we can start working with students at 14 if they're wanting to look for competitive employment. She'll link eligible students on the track to employment, their families, and their schools to the employment transition activities available in our area, which would be the employability classes. Andrea does do the pre-ETs for OED, which your child could be referred to her through your OED counselor, and Andrea does a great job of walking them through employment counseling, career counseling. What did you say?
I will spend some time.
He's gonna tell you all about pre-ETs because I just read the reports and send them on. She shares information with students and families about job building skills, volunteer internship opportunities. I know that she has helped some schools in the past come up with volunteer sites for students to go and get some experience of being out in the community and working or getting some work skills. So So she works with students, parents, special education teachers, the parent mentors. I haven't heard that word for a while, but we used to be very close with the parent mentor at Centerville. She works with,
I think we still are.
okay, works with job developers, job coaches, work study coordinators and employers. So Andrea, if there's a student we have a student down in the Centerville area that has obtained a job before they graduated. So Andrea's gone out and talked to the employer and talked to the young adult to just see how things are going at the work site, just to make sure that we don't need job coaching or any other services. Andrea can make referrals to OOD. If the school has not made the referral, she'll work with the school to see how we want to work that referral source out, because sometimes the schools like to make it. Am I hitting the red arrow?
Down at the bottom.
Yeah. One thing we did want to talk about is Project Search. So Andrea will talk to students about Project Search, which is a transition program. It is a 9-month school to work program geared towards students who have completed all high school credit requirements and have deferred their diploma. And this is for students who are between the ages of 18 and 21 and want to work. The 2 project searches that are currently in our area is sewing. Butler Tech has one, but yeah, I think you have to be in Butler County to go there. And then Dayton Public has a project search at Grandview. And so this is a great program for students. They can do 3 internships during the school year. They also get classroom instruction time, career exploration. They do a lot of interviewing skills. How do you dress for success? And then there's also the hands-on training through the various internships. And it also gives the student kind of an idea to say, yes, I like this type of work, or no, I don't like this type of work. So we really support our project search. We also have Project Life through at Wright State through Greene County. So if a student would be interested in attending Project Life, talk to Andrea and she can help you get connected with them. And it's an application process also, just like Project Search. We are still running summer youth boot camps. And this is an old flyer, but just so you know, we're doing career exploration. We've kind of this time made it more age grouped, grouped by age when the students come for the week. They have a great time. It's fun to go down and see. They do a little bit of work, cleaning at a church. They this year went to the Marriott, took a tour, got to eat some good food. They take a bus ride down to the RTA hub. They go for pizza on the last day, and then the OED counselor comes and talks to them while they're having pizza. We bring in past students to talk, and everybody seems to really enjoy boot camp. And Andrea will start sending all those flyers out around April-ish. March, April.
We're hoping this year to bring back something summer 2024, possibly the work experience piece of camp. Hoping to find something out in this month, if that'll be a go or not.
And they would be paid if we did a work experience. So, and now we're going to talk about transition. So I'll turn it over to Stacy. Thank you.
Hello, so I'm Stacy Mullens. I am the transition SSA for the board. I have everyone who is aged 18 to 22 who is not enrolled on a waiver. So if you have a waiver prior to the age of 18, you will skip me and you will just work with your adult SSA for all of the things that you will be seeing covered right now. So I will attend IEPs as much as I humanly can. It's kind of first come, first served. Again, because I have a caseload, it ranges from about 85 to 100. Like Centerville has already sent me their IEP schedule for the year. So I'm going to make it to those because they were the first ones on my calendar. So if your school is kind of late sending me the dates, I may be double booked and can't make your IEP, but I really, really try. I really enjoy attending those. It's a good chance to get to meet everyone and learn about what's going on with everyone. We have something called a waiting list assessment now. I hear a lot of families worried about not being enrolled on a waiver yet. So if you feel that you're in an emergency situation and you need a waiver immediately, we can complete the assessment to see if the team determines there is an immediate need. I do want to kind of squash a rumor. I get a lot of panicked phone calls. People say that they've been told they have to have a waiver, so they need a waiver so that they can do day services in the future. So you do not have to have that waiver until you actually exit school, and we will enroll you on that waiver when you exit school. So we do it simultaneously with the exit from school and the enrollment in a day program. So you really, unless there is something, health-wise going on at home with the caregiver or something related behaviorally, we will get you to that waiver when the time is right, when you're exiting school, when it's time to start that day program and the transportation to the day program. Once you exit, we'll be talking about employment. If that dovetails with day service, you can do both. We hope that you do both. We really encourage employment. We help with transportation if possible to employment, but we do have day options for people who are not ready for the work piece, and you can mix and match those programs. 5 days a week, you can do 2 days somewhere, 2 days someone where else, and then a third program 1 day a week if you choose. So we can help navigate that. We'll help set up tours for that. Any waiting list situations for day programs, that will be between you and the provider, though. The board doesn't have a say in openings or how they handle waiting lists, because those are private providers, and sometimes your adult child's name will come up on the waiting list before they're ready to attend. They may not have exited school yet. So while there's say an opening in March, when your adult child comes out in May or June, that opening could be gone, and you just have to wait until that next opening. We don't have any control over that. So I do want you to be aware that you can prepare as much as possible, but sometimes it does not line up exactly, but we'll help you find another program in the meantime. That we can tour. We help you get the collateral, which is paperwork for these day programs. Some of them require medical forms completed and things like that. So we'll make sure you have all the paperwork needed to attend the program, and then we'll do your initial ISP, which is similar to your school IEP. And at that time, you will transition off of my caseload and onto an intake SSA's caseload. And if you, anytime between the age of 18 and 22, get a waiver, you will transition off my caseload, because I, again, only have non-waiver people. I do work closely with the employment navigators that Michelle talked about. I work closely with OOD staff, Lois Mesher, Rachel. We both work really close together. We step in when OOD has found that your adult child is independent in their job, they're ready to go. So OOD closes you out. We will stay there in the background just in case, or if we need to reopen the case, or it might be something simple where your adult child gets a new manager at work and we maybe need to smooth things over a little bit. We can step in where you don't necessarily need OOD back in the picture, but we just need to, speak up a little and make sure things are going well. Again, I mentioned the waiting list for providers and families, or if programs expand, we'll make sure and get the information to you about those options. I'll send information about open houses that providers may do to see if you are interested. I can try and attend those with you if you want to go. We do education like tonight. And I also do, like Kaye mentioned, I can do referrals for Medicaid, SSI, guardianship, family support services, any of those benefits related things that may pop up as your adult child gets older. We also have a community SSA, and Kaye touched on that too. So that is for someone who maybe has chosen not to enroll in day programming. They may not want any follow along at work, but they still want to stay connected to us, maybe use our family support services program. They can also help you get documents, help with guardianship, very, very limited transportation, help finding non-waiver housing. We have a separate person who does waiver housing. And again, the family support services program, because some families just strictly use us for something like respite care. We do have on our website, ways to see the independent providers, the private providers. There's a provider search tool. We have a PowerPoint presentation on our website. We do ask the providers to keep that current. It is not always current, but I can help you with that too when you're looking for a provider. A lot of times I may have more current information than what the website unfortunately reflects. But I would be glad to help you look at any of these day programs as you get closer to exiting. And we will send our transition letters for this year. If your student is exiting this school year, you'll be getting a letter sometime this month with what we call a transition packet. And we ask for some documents. And please send that in sooner rather than later, because when everyone exits in the spring, we get kind of backlogged with getting those initial ISPs written. And sometimes there's a little bit of delay getting people started because we only have 3 people writing the initial service plans. So if you turn your stuff into me between now and December, then you're kind of first in line for when you make your selection for programs when you exit school.
Stacy, can you explain exiting versus graduation? Because you keep saying exiting.
And exiting is
Yeah, sorry.
when you actually take that diploma. It is not when you walk with your class, when you are finished with school, or when you turn 22, or if you're 20 and you have all your credits and you're sick of school and you're deciding to leave. So you will not get a transition packet if you are graduating this year, unless you are also exiting and not becoming a super senior. Employment navigation, I've kind of done it. We have an extra.
No, I haven't talked about it.
Okay, guess I'm done. Sorry.
Do you want to talk about it?
No, I don't.
Oh, okay.
Like, wait, that's not my slide.
Okay, so, Stacy kind of touched on the employment navigation piece. So in Montgomery County, we have 4 employment navigators who will work with your student as they transition from high school to adult life. Either Stacy will make the referral or the ESSA will make the referral. And it's usually about the time when they're ready to get an adult SSA. Now, if Stacy knows that a student is graduating, exiting school, she may make that referral a little bit earlier, especially if the student is working with OOD, so the navigator can get to know the person, kind of get a lay of the land, or they may be getting close to getting a job. So we want to make sure that we're right there with them, walking them through that process. So the employment navigator's responsibilities include working with individuals to establish a goal for employment. Usually at the high school age, when they come to us, they probably may already have a goal if they're working with OOD. But this could be achieved by various work assessments. We have some assessments that we do internally. We could do career exploration, we could do discovery, or career planning. We work very closely with OOD, so we can even make the referral to OOD because will have all the collateral information that we can send over to them. So the EN will become a part of the individual's team, and they will make recommendations as to using waiver services to help the individual prepare for employment. And then, of course, if they're working with OOD, then OOD is going to drive the boat of where we're going employment wise, and the EN was just there to support and help the family walk through those services. I've already covered that they work closely with the Employment First counselors, school districts, and Project Search. So, and then they really work close with employment providers. So we are getting quite a few more employment providers in Montgomery County, but the ones that we work with the most closely would probably be Matrix, Goodwill, Successful U, Capabilities, URS. Yeah, so, and they have a really good working relationship with the job developers and the job coaches with all those providers. So once the individual is employed, the employment navigator or the employment provider will provide follow-along services. So I know Dave's gonna talk a little bit more about OOD services, but once they've been employed successfully for 90 days without a job coach with them, then they're going to, OOD is gonna close their case, and we would like for them to have follow-along services, just like Stacy said, they get a new manager. We see that a lot, and sometimes new managers just don't understand any of their employees. So sometimes we just have to go in and fine tune things. I mean, sometimes all of us need to brush up on our skill, like something maybe we don't do often. I mean, I can say for one, all my evaluations for my staff fall in from June to October. So from October to May, I sound like, oh, I have to do what now, where does this go? Where does this go? So sometimes new managers just like to change everything up, and we're gonna do it my way or the highway. So if we can get somebody, a provider in there to say, hey, what's going on? And sometimes we would have to reopen them with OOD to get some job coaching services, or we could use their waiver dollars to pay for some job coaching. So once they pick a follow-along service provider, the EN will discontinue services, but if anything happens, you can always call them, call your SSA, and we can step right back in. Employment navigators also help with arranging transportation, whether that be getting an application completed for Project Mobility, just getting those first rides set up with Project Mobility, or if they want a non-medical transportation provider, they can do the referral or send out the request for NMT and help with the interview process, and then work with the SSA to get all of this in the ISP. And then one other staff person I wanted to speak about tonight before I turn it over to Dave is our certified work incentive counselor, and that's Tammy Disney, and I'm not sure if any of you know her. She can complete benefits analysis for individuals receiving services from the board or OOD if OOD has a waiting list. And then, so the employment navigator, the SSAs, or OOD can make the referrals to Tammy. And what we're seeing recently is it's people who are already working that Tammy is working more closely with to make sure that they are within the hours that they need to be in, so they're not losing their benefits. And Tammy is a great resource to calculate. If you say, I'm gonna make $14.85 an hour and I want to work 25 hours a week, she can do all these calculations and say, no, you need to drop it down, or you can work more hours than that. So, and she can also help with SSI and SSDI, and she has also helped families and how to report. So SSI has an app that you can report off of, which is wonderful because you just take pictures of your check stubs and send them on their merry way, and SSDI does not. And the two of them do not talk together. There are two separate entities, which makes it very hard and frustrating. So that is Tammy. And then here is our information, and I'm going to turn it over to David Sullivan from OOD.
Hi, everybody. I'm David Sullivan, and I'm a supervisor with Opportunities for Ohioans with Disabilities, otherwise known as OOD. And the first thing I want to do is just applaud all of you parents and students that are either here in person or joining us virtually, because you are doing the right thing. We're talking about transition tonight, helping your student or yourself make that move from high school into the world of work. And there is a lot involved with that. And one of the very best things that you can do for yourself is to get educated about the different systems, whether that's the County Board of Developmental Disability Services or Opportunities for Ohioans with Disabilities, or what your school should be doing. So it's just really, really good that you're participating tonight. So the first thing I want to do is to talk a little bit about what OOD does. So we are a state agency that provides what's called vocational rehabilitation services to individuals that have disability. And these services are for the purpose of helping somebody to become successfully and independently employed in a community-based job. And when I say community-based job, what I mean by that is really any job that is in the community at a place of employment that pays regular wages. It's not a part of the human services system. So that's the type of employment that we are interested or focused on when helping a student become employed. Like I said, we help individuals that have disabilities with becoming employed. And so I want to say a little bit about what it means to have a disability, because that can be kind of confusing. A disability is any condition, either physical, mental, emotional, or cognitive, that creates barriers towards employment or community involvement. And so that could be anything from like a learning disability that affects a person's ability to read or write. It could be an emotional disability that maybe somebody's struggling with depression or anxiety, or it could be a physical disability that interferes with a person's ability to maybe walk or use their arms, or it could be a visual impairment or a hearing impairment. So it's a really broad category. And one of the things you should know is that if you as a student or your child is on an IEP, they are more than likely somebody with a disability and more than likely would be eligible for our services. And one of the things I caution people against is screening yourself out from these services. So going, well, my son's got this or that, but I think he could get a job, or he's never tried, but I think he could get a job. Let us make that determination about whether or not your son or daughter is eligible for our services, because more often than not, people are eligible for those services. Eligibility criteria, there are 4 things. First of all, as I've indicated, someone has to have a condition, and that condition has to result in a substantial impediment to employment. The third criteria is that someone has to be able to benefit from an employment outcome. And what that means is that the disability is not so severe that they can't get or keep a job. And also don't rule yourself out or your son or daughter out because of severity of disability. We are really working towards, getting as many people as possible employed in community jobs. And so don't screen yourself out for that. The last criteria is that they have to need our services in order to become employed. In other words, if they could obtain employment or learn a job on their own or without our kinds of services, then they wouldn't be eligible. In my almost 20 years of service, working in this agency, I think there might have been 1 or 2 individuals that weren't eligible for services. So just really kind of stressing that. Once an individual is eligible for services, then the counselor will work with them to identify an appropriate job goal. And that's really based on what their strengths are, what their limitations are, and also what is it that interests them. But it is important to know that we focus on all of those things. It has to be a good fit for the person's ability, because we want you to be successful in services. So once a goal is identified, then the counselor will work with the individual to identify what services are needed. And I'm going to say a little bit about those different services. One of the services that is on almost everybody's plan is what we call job development. And that's somebody working with the individual to help them to get a job. And they're going to, first of all, work with them on interviewing skills, resume development. If they're not somebody that can independently interview, a job developer will go with them on site for those interviews. The type of assistance that's provided in that job search is really individualized. We're always trying to help people do it as independently as possible, but recognizing that some people are going to need supports all through that process. And the job developer will work with them throughout the job development phase until they become employed. Once they're employed, another service that we can provide is called on-the-job supports or job coaching. And that's someone that can go on the job to assist them with learning that job. And the job coach will be there in a fairly intensive kind of way at the beginning of that job, and then fade from the job over time until that person is independent. And then, like Michelle alluded to, we will keep their case open for 90 days after they've become successful or stable on that job, just to make sure that everything's going okay. Those are the 2 main services. We can get involved with helping with transportation. We sometimes get involved with what we call rehabilitation technology, which is bringing technology or devices into the mix. So somebody maybe with a physical impairment or a speech impairment might benefit from some type of technology that's going to help them to perform the functions of a job. We can also get into training, whether that's short-term certificate-based training or college training. It really depends on the individual, their skills, their abilities, and also their limitations. Like I said, everything's really individualized to what the person needs. So now I want to talk a little bit about transition services, which are the specific services that we provide to students with disabilities. So our transition services, somebody's eligible for those transition services if they're eligible for our services and they are 14 but not yet 22 and currently enrolled in secondary or high school. And so the first service is what we call pre-employment transition services. And these are really introductory kind of services to help somebody that's usually on the younger end of this sort of age spectrum that I gave you, to introduce you to employment. And so the first one is what we call instructions in self-advocacy, which is a service to help people to learn how to advocate for themselves, which becomes really important as they move through this transition process. There's also a service called post-secondary counseling. So for the student that's on a college-bound track, there's a lot to think about with that, and especially if you're a student with a disability. So this post-secondary counseling will help them start to think about things to consider if they're looking at a college-bound route. There's also something called work-based learning, which is going to help them with the interpersonal skills that are involved with both getting a job, but also keeping a job. And then we've got, I think it's called work exploration. That's not quite right, but there's a service that has a similar name. And that's really getting at just exploring the world of work. What does it mean to work? What does it mean that employers have certain expectations that you have to meet? What does it take to get a job? What about career advancement? Things like that. And so that's another one. And then there's a final one, I believe it's called job exploration counseling. And again, just a really introductory level, sort of helping people think about what are their interests and how does that apply to the different kinds of work that are out there? What are their skills and abilities? And how do I factor those in when thinking about a type of work? I really stress that these are kind of entry points into this whole thing of employment. Students are not going to leave these services, these pre-employment transition services with like skills mastered and things like that. It's more kind of exposure and starting to learn the lay of the land a little bit. At the appropriate time, we want to get them, those pre-employment transition services can happen before they actually have an open case with us. We call them a potentially eligible individual, or they can happen after they have an open case with us. But at some point at that point where they're doing kind of that basic introductory stuff, they might also be working with the county board, or they might be doing stuff with their school, but they'll get referred to us, and that referral usually occurs through the school, but could happen through like Montgomery County Board of Developmental Disability Services or whichever county board you're connected with. And then the counselor is going to start again working with them and really try to plot out a path from high school into working. And because they're new to this and new to work, that first plan might be somewhat flexible. It might change over time as we learn more about your students' skills and abilities and things like that. One of the really capstone services that can be super, super valuable that we try to get students involved with is what we call summer youth work experience. And what this is actual work. So we place students in actual jobs in the community. These are entry-level jobs, unskilled, but everybody starts there. And it's really an opportunity to both learn about themselves and what they like to do, but also learn about what employers expect. With that summer youth work experience, when they're on the job working, they will have a job coach with them, guiding them, teaching them, and helping them learn these basic work skills and getting used to it. And this could be something that they receive over the course of multiple summers. You know, if we're starting a student early enough, they might get summer youth work experience a couple of different times before they graduate. But eventually, as they move into being a senior and graduate, then we're going to transition them to those services that are going to help them with the next step, whether that's training or into job placement. And Michelle mentioned many provider agencies, Capabilities, Goodwill, United Rehabilitation Services, Matrix, and the county themselves for like work incentives. And these provider agencies are community organizations, usually nonprofit, that provide the services that I'm talking about. So with OOD, the counselor's working with your student in a very individual way, identifying what services they need. And then the counselor is referring them to the different agencies to get the services they need. And they have a choice about which agency to use with these services. And we are a funder of these services. The student or the family does not have to pay for these services. This is what Opportunities for Ohioans with Disabilities will do. The exception to that is when we get further along in that process, there may be some things that you would have to purchase, especially if you're like in a training program, things like that. But that's determined on an individual basis as the person moves along that path. I wanted to kind of conclude with, you know, just a couple of things on transition. As you can see, there can be multiple organizations involved. As a parent, as a student, start early, start asking questions, go to IEP meetings, ask them who should be at the table, what kinds of questions you should be asking, things like that. It's just really important to have an active role. And like I said, it's just really good that you all are joining tonight. So that is it for me. I think we can transition to the question portion.
Can you hear me in the room?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. I wasn't sure with the screen going out in the room if you can hear me. We do have a question for Dave here online. And it says, can OOD help our children with setting up their own jobs, such as cleaning fish tanks, beekeeping, that sort of thing? Like if they have a job, can OOD help them with setting up their own job? Maybe that, Tony, maybe it was that like as an entrepreneur kind of thing?
Yes. So something that they don't have to compete against other people. They have their own job, they have their own businesses. Maybe somebody who is has a very variety of hobbies that are things that they do well with that other people may want help with, like cleaning the fish tank. I have no idea how to do that, but maybe there is a person who excels at that, and I want to have that person come in and employ that person. So things like that is not like more competitive. It's more like their own type of business.
Yeah, I can certainly answer that. So what you're talking about there, it sounds like, or let me back up. We do have the possibility of supporting people in what we call self-employment. And so by self-employment, we mean gainful employment. So this is employment that's going to be at a significant enough level to you know, have a decent income, meet their needs, that kind of thing. But we're talking about self-employment. So the expectation is that they would be a business owner. And we do have a path for that where we can help people develop a business plan, put together the things they need to do to have their own business, that kind of thing. Self-employment is a big thing, and it involves a lot of different things. It involves a lot of risks, and we're going to help that individual assess whether or not they A, have the skills and abilities to do that, B, are aware of what's all involved in self-employment, and aware of the risks and things like that. And I'm kind of stressing the risks because I know a lot of people that have inquired about self-employment with us, once they got into it and really kind of had a sense of what all was involved, you know, really saw it differently and decided to go to work for a regular employer. But certainly that's a possibility, and we would, you know, give that a real look as an option for people.
No, thank you. Thank you for that.
Are there any other questions online? Thank you, Dave.
Sure.
So I just had just a few comments. I know they lost the screen there, or the Zoom screen in the room. As long as you can hear me, it's fine.
Hold on, honey, we have one question in the room.
Okay.
Sorry, I had a question about, so when you talk about adult, you mean 18 or you mean when they're out of school? Because my daughter has a summer birthday, so she just turned 17, but she's a junior. So when we do all of this, or a lot of this, it'll be next. So, I mean, I'd like to start now, but so I can understand it better, but when as far as services, would that be after she turns 18 or after she graduates, which will be in 2025?
Okay, so the question on our end is, when we talk about adult, are we talking about when they turn 18, or are we talking about when they turn 22? And but also, when do we start services? So I think that this is a double question. One, when we say adult, we're talking 22, but are you wanting services like pre-employment services and employment services, those type of services? Because we could start tomorrow. Well, okay, maybe.
Oh, yeah, I mean, and I think she's just getting, I think that her intervention specialist or teacher at Northmont, we're at Inglewood.
Okay.
I think that he got them on a path for that, which is amazing, but of course we can use extra support with that. But when I was specifically asking about with this 18 thing is when Kaye was first talking about eligibility, and so she has a path coordinator, an SSA path coordinator is an old SSA for family support services. But when she turns 18, will she then she'll move to you? Okay, but even if she's still in school.
Mhm.
Okay, that's what I was trying to figure out, because I was like, is it 18 or is it when they're done with school? Because she will still be in school for
So,
a while.
when your student turns 18, they will be assigned to Stacy, and Stacy will work with them from 18 to 22.
Okay.
Or until they,
And that's in Montgomery County.
Yes,
Okay,
that is
so
in
other
Montgomery County.
counties
Okay.
might be different.
Okay.
Might be different.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
you're welcome.
It is confusing.
It is.
Does anybody else have any questions?
We have
Okay.
another question online then. Go ahead, Tony.
Hi, I just wanted to, because my son had turned 18 last October. Just know once they turn 18 and you may not be able to have a say in some of the things he or she wants to do, because at that point they're considered an age of majority unless you have some type of I don't know, what's the right word, Patty? Guardianship or power of attorney, or, just know they can kick you out of the IEP meeting. If there's, just be aware that once they're 18, they have reached the age of majority regardless of their capabilities. And that comes with a lot of decisions that maybe they may not be able to understand the repercussions or the consequences of those decisions. They could also block you from not going to their medical appointments. So a lot of things come with that birthday.
Right. I would agree that a lot of things come with that birthday, but I think the question was more for services. When do they go to Stacy? Do they go to Stacy at 18 or do they go to Stacy at 22? Or when could we start looking employment wise? Do we have to wait till they're 22? I think that, and I don't want to speak for Dave, but I think that we take the stance of the sooner the better, of getting your students working with somebody in the employment arena.
I do have another question here online. It says, could someone explain what a waiver is and the difference between having one and not having one? And just also with that, I mean, you guys, I'll let you go, but we will be talking about waivers later in the year, but it'll be not till next spring, but we will be covering that in more detail later too. But if you guys someone want to pitch in you can an answer to that.
I think one thing for the waivers, we're talking about a needs-based assessment. So that's one thing that's a little bit different now. So we're looking at your child's needs. And as far as waivers go, I think Patty hit the nail on the head when she said that's a whole presentation in and of itself. But if you recall, Stacy talked about, when you get ready to go into adult services, that Stacy and that group will work with you to get a waiver at that time. So if there is a need currently, by all means, contact your SSA and they can do that needs-based assessment. But if you're strictly talking about waivers with respect to adult services or employment services, that's something that they'll do as they're exiting school. Does that, Andrea, Michelle and Stacy, do you guys have anything else you want to add?
I don't.
No, I don't.
Is there information in that online bond binder? What's the
Oh, the live binders?
live binder?
Is that, yes, there is.
Maybe we
Patty,
can go look
I
it
can
up.
see Patty, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, we're having technical difficulties. I can see Patty shaking her head, yes, so
Yeah,
yes,
go
there
look up
is.
for a past talk on
Yes.
the waiver or.
Yes.
Yeah.
Here's our upcoming year thing, and then here is
Yeah,
our
but
line. You got
yeah,
to vote. Okay, good.
Yeah, so yeah, we'll be covering waivers, but yes, you can definitely go into the live binder and you'll see previous presentations. Now, just keep in mind, these things can change from year to year. Nothing stays concrete for us parents. It's like it keeps changing with depending on whatever the current what do I want to say? The numbers can change, the assessments can change, all these things. So but it'll give you an idea. And you can also go to and I believe it's still out there, Michelle, and DODD. There's a website link for the DODD. And you can look under waivers and there's also probably something under the ARC of Ohio, but they have a definition of the waivers there as well. But I have that link in the live binder. So if you can, check out the live binder. Let's see, hold on. Look in here. Okay, so there is a question out here. What is the very first step getting this started? Who is our first contact? Our grandson is 15 and in the 10th grade at West Carrollton. He has an IEP. So I'm thinking that who is our first contact and get started? So I believe that would be, I guess, Kaye, back to you, or Michelle, you can take it.
They would need to call Ginger Muse, and her phone number is 937 457
2888.
2888. And if you leave a message, she'll call you back within 24 hours.
Usually faster.
Usually, yeah, she's on it.
She is. She's great.
Let me double check that because I'm typing it out for those who are online. Ginger Muse, it's 937-457-2888. Correct? Okay.
Okay, yeah, correct.
Okay. So I just wanted to make a comment too. Let me go ahead and I'm going to close the recording real quick so we can continue to talk a little bit here. It'll just take me a minute, but for everybody that's attended, I want to thank you for all attending this first hybrid. But I know sometimes after we have our session, we do have like some discussions going on. I want to be sure that anybody can open freely with the discussions. But one thing I wanted to do just to, with parents where you're at, believe me, when I got into this transition stage, I was a latecomer. And I remember sitting in a meeting like yours, and they talked about the OEDI. And I looked at my husband and I said, oh my gosh, what is an OEDI? I've already been through eligibility for this and eligibility for that. And I had to go back to our county board and say, what is the OEDI exactly? So if you ever get stuck, like in, any questions or anything, just keep in mind, you can ask them if you're not sure about something or need to go back and check. Provider fairs, they mentioned that one. Those are great. Anything with a fair, any transition fair, provider fairs are all great too. And invite people, like they mentioned, to your IEP. I wish I'd have known that. I would have been inviting everybody because I always felt very outnumbered or alone at those IEPs. So 1 second, it looks like maybe there we go, stop recording.